Hey everybody, it's Maiden. Okay, it's a quarter afternoon, and I'm going to pick up on the timeline. This is part 2. We got a little cut off there. Okay, so we're going back to the impeachable offenses, high crimes and misdemeanors, and the timeline of offenses. Okay, so inside of 1989 to 1993, George Bush Sr., 4 years, emollients, Halliburton. Okay, that's just for starters. They were such a prestigious family, much like the Trumps. They had investments all over the place. So if you were to look at that and you were to pinpoint President Bush, like you're doing Trump, he probably would have been found out about some of this stuff in the Middle East. So you look at what's going on again in the backside of the house. Are we in any kind of war? Are we in any kind of portfolio of war, risk, insurance, right? Okay, so where did his investment go? It went into the Middle East. It went in right into the next war zone. So you can easily say forensically he was setting himself up for what he would have already knew through the Iran-Contra, that was more evidence, weapons. Okay, so there's this issue in the Middle East. But it was exacerbated when? It was exacerbated immediately at 2001. What happened at 2001? The Twin Towers blew up. AIG, enter. So now AIG, it's just so amazing that they're the ones that continue to be standing there holding the wealth ball, because they're the ones that they can easily say, well, we're holding all the risk. Well, no, you're not. You're actually creating a causation to preempting or premeditation or all kinds of stuff. Okay, so let's continue. So George Bush Sr., nobody wanted to point their finger at him, right? Washington royalty, right? So we're not going to look in that direction. Now we're going to go 1993 to 2001. And we have now Bill Clinton. The Clinton family surname goes back into the slave, and then the Bush name actually is the hereditary, ancient, biblical burning bush. This bush, it's linked literally to the Bible, and some of these names go back. Reagan goes back into royalty. Clinton goes back into the founding fathers establishing Harlem. That was Clinton. You can see Clinton woven through a lot of the founding fathers' perpetuities. They're not going to point the finger there. But what happened here? Let's look at the timeline. Okay, so the 20-year impeachment bond from Nixon, we go back into 74, 84, 94. Who's on the line? 94. Bill Clinton. We've got to find something on Bill Clinton to continue all of the bond portfolio maturation, saturation, momentum. That's what portfolios have. They have a momentum. That's what all of our study is of stocks and bonds, and the stock market is is watching the rhythms and momentums, correct? Okay, so we're not standing still. Whenever you're looking at strategy of the portfolios, you're looking at the backstory, okay? You got to look at the backstory, what's been laid. So when Clinton went in and got impeached, he established the Clinton Foundation, okay? Now his wife and him are a team, so this doesn't roll just on one dimension. This rolls in a quantum parallel dual working together. Clinton, President Clinton and Secretary Clinton married, holy bonds of matrimony. So you've got a dual parallel bonding signature. She was secretary, so the secretary has a signature, checkbook, all kinds of stuff. Transfers of money in the Clinton era, and then having the maturation of bonds of the impeachment portfolio. Bill Clinton gets impeached. And then next, go back to Bush Jr. So then he picks up the baton from his dad, and that's all going on behind the scenes while the Clinton thing is up in front. Bush Sr. is setting the stage for Bush Jr. And if you remember the elections during that time, that was supposed to go to Gore, and it went to Bush. And it was through his brother in Florida, in Texas, simultaneously these guys helping, their family to get into this office. Was that impeachable? Did that last? No. Why? Because the Bush royalty, the Bush so we're looking at a bias. My point is that this is bias. When they decide to go impeachment, they're going to go for somebody who is what? Okay, now if we go, just stay on point. What's next? 2001, Twin Towers went down. 2001, Bush Jr. went into office. So it was a simultaneous, again, seamless AIG. AIG pays out the World Trade Center bonds from when they started here in 70, seamlessly with 73. Okay, so we come down, we look, where are we now? 73, 83, 93, Bill Clinton, 93, 94, impeachment. And then we go to the next one, 2001 to 2009, we've got a whole new kettle of fish. George W. Bush Jr., 8 years. Hal Burton, that was Hal Burton. It was the pickup of Hal Burton. Emollients, could this be an emollients generational handoff baton to the next one? Well, there's evidence that yes, this is very much involved. So then you go, okay, look the other way because we love the Bushes. We don't want to do anything there. Okay, what's next? 2009 to 2017. President Barack Obama, our very first black African-American president. We're trying to get out of slavery into freedom. So no, everybody's looking at him like the great white hope, even though he was black. And he is holding now this for 8 years. Now, does he focus? Is he focusing? Is he focusing clearly where he's supposed to be? Or is he trying to be cool? Well, what happened is that the banking thing hit the skids while President Obama was standing there holding the bag. However, the 2007 housing crash actually came out in 2007, not 8, not 9. They can say that it wasn't 7, but it was 7. And 2017 was the end of Barack Obama's presidency. So there was a 10-year maturation of bonds. President George Bush started the housing crash, but 10 years before that, in the middle of this whole other era, Clinton, you can really see these default swaps with the banks and the holdings with the banks, that they had already designed the default swaps to go in and be used at the time that they were used. So we have President Barack Obama, a 10-year bond maturation of the housing crisis, which is also the default swaps. And then also, if you look at the insurance, each one of these presidents had an insurance they were jockeying for, put in their name. The Obamacare was actually naming President Obama in the healthcare perpetuity. And if you go to AIG, I want to go back to AIG. AIG is in the backstory of all of the wars of the risk of America. Okay? So the banking bailout happened. AIG was the banking bailout. Okay? During President Obama. Okay, so everybody's complying. Everybody's handing the payout ball to AIG. We don't have a president who said, well, let's look at that, because I think I've even become a victim to that, which you were in President Trump's case. I don't know if his defense attorneys are even going to go there, but if I was on his defense team, I would say immediately look into this exact issue of his father's life, okay, because you're going to see a ton there if you can just go there. His dad and his grandfather with the Deutsche Bank and the Hitler money and all of that. And was President Trump today groomed for this position? You can see the ones that are groomed. Cory Booker, he's being groomed. He's been groomed. And who else was there? New Jersey. Chris Christie. I mean, you can see when these guys are being raised to go into politics or that particular seat, and that's not necessarily good. But this is what's happened. It's created a bias. George Bush Sr., George Bush Jr. You've got Ford, you've got Reagan, you've got Carter, you've got Obama here. And Obama's name, his last name, represents in code of the SEC jurisdiction a labor formulation bond, also Bank of America, also Bonds of America, with the maturation of accounts. And so when you look at his last name and you go, okay, is that really his last name? Because it's literally representing labor bonds, more of that slave labor. And it's an account hedge around monetization. So this is like a slave atmosphere. I don't know if they chose him, gave him that name. That's just his name. I have no idea if this was set up like this, but I'm just reading the codification to you. And then his last name is in his first name, Barrak, and then BOBA again. BA is also known as the Bank of America. There's a double R in the middle of his name, which is a reserve wall or unbreakable, unpenetrable, can't go through it wall. It's literally like a wall. And then the end, it's the AK, which is the accounts of kings. And yes, he's royalty, absolutely, but all jurisdictions are royalty. Okay, so Barack Obama was an amazing period of time to be alive, because you could see the African American rising up to do this. But there was things about him that are so obscure that it made you think forensically he was put there. He was groomed to be there. He was an anomaly in terms of like, okay, we're going to take him, place him there. He's going to perform, and we're going to have our first Black African American Muslim president. Okay, so what did he do? Now, this is interesting, and this is a little bit scary, but I'm going to go there because our Congress is looking at impeachable high crimes offenses here. Okay, so Obama allowed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac during the 2007 debacle. It was handed to him. So President George Bush set him up, handed him the ball, okay, and said, you're going to get this stinky ball, and I'm leaving, and you're going to have to just take care of it. Try this like, okay. So what happened is that George Bush Jr. left, went to go paint and be on the ranch, and President Barack Obama is holding this enormous challenge of the housing crash. Okay, now he had all of the slavery books. Also, they pushed that to the middle. Okay, this is our first Black president, so we can have him ride this, roll through this, see what he does with it. Put all of the slavery, all of the bondages, all of the banking bondages, including what they could have called the common law bog, because the administrative part of this, risks of war, is not to invade administrative jurisdiction, but they did, because they brought in the code and they brought in all kinds of stuff. And was our country was our Congress alive and kicking then? Well, we don't hear any problems with that. In fact, they're the ones that had a lot to do with the laws enforcing code and in the invasion. So my question is Congress able to be impeached? Because here's why. With President Barack Obama watching with eyes open the AIG bailout after the AIG Vietnam bailout, payout, because they got the death benefits, all of them, up to the point of, there's a question here, 4.5 million death benefits. We're not even talking about the quantification of that number. So AIG got paid out on that. AIG got paid out on the World Trade Center thing to the tune of all these deaths, American deaths. That's impeachable offenses. Those are high crimes offenses. So then we're coming to President Barack Obama, and now we got the bailout, but the bailout has got another whole twist and turn with the tech sector. And the tech sector is trying to move in and take over common law, administrative jurisdiction, and the jurisdiction of the state, which we are. And I'm telling you, I feel the invasion big time. And I'm looking down at this timeline of the emoluments of Halliburton, of the families involved in Halliburton, and then the war crimes, armament portfolio investments. Congress knew about that. Congress has known about all of this. Are they impeachable? What about Nancy Pelosi right now asking her, weren't you involved in the AIG bailout? Weren't you involved in the Halliburton era, the Clinton era, this other Halliburton era, the housing crash, the bailouts, all of the AIG backstory blending seamlessly, timeline together? Haven't you known all of the equity on the table of the people? And then we're not even going to talk about the Delaware, because AIG is a Delaware corporation that attaches to everything. So these are state secrets that are interwoven, blended jurisdictions. You've got our Supreme Court justices completely bamboozled on this, and it's so unfair because it doesn't show anybody any respect. Our FBI, from the very beginning of the FBI with Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover, he set up our FBI to be agents of almost self-destruction inside of themselves, to the point of sexual bonds with the enemy, interwoven relationships with the enemy. I mean, where you just really can't pull apart the FBI from the enemy, because the FBI has been called to be part of the enemy's family. So this is the issue. If you love, you're going to have to bring this into redemption, not persecution, not any more of this. Because right now, President Trump, because you guys wanted President Obama to bring in that Muslim agenda, which they did do, because they turned it over to India. They turned over the 2007 housing crisis servicing of the mortgages to India. India changed all of this new contract to tenancy, because that's Sharia law. So you're saying, okay, don't come in and just be Sharia law in America. Just do it through the administrative invasion. And if they catch it, we'll file claims, you're out, we're back, and that's what this is. Okay, well, somebody's going to, our President Trump isn't an attorney, thank God, but he has gotten himself into some fixes because of the attorneys that he's chosen. So now are his attorneys going to go hardball against this entrapment of AIG, of the Deutsche Bank systems that are FDIC doesn't cover, but AIG will. I mean, all the riders, all the maritime riders, all of the different exploitations of our military, our sons and daughters, our CIA that we have needed so badly to be for America and have a staunch stand for America, has been so infiltrated with international spies that we don't have a CIA anymore, really. It's an international spy hub, and America needs to rededicate to the federal. And so the Federal Reserve isn't federal. The Federal Reserve is a private institution, banking for profit, and they are rascals, and they use our e pluribus unum. They use our In God We Trust jurisdiction, which is the highest ecclesiastical jurisdiction, and you have tromped all over that, and I take issue against you for that, because that is a holy, sacred space before God to guarantee the United States of America faith and every other country who has done this, what our founding fathers has done. So why hasn't Congress impeached the presidents that have allowed the Treasury and the IRS to run through together in tandem when they know that the Treasury should always be separate, always completely separate and federal to America, and the IRS is a whole other rooted encroachment, rooted strong-arming, rooted in I'm going to take power and control over the American people. The power and control of the American people is the American people's. And there really isn't any power and control over the American people unless the American people have said we consent. But what I take issue with is their quality of consent. Because if you go to most American people and you say, do you agree with everything you've consented to on this device? Or do you feel pushed and shoved and made to, or else you will not get the service or the value that is required for you to have in this? So is your consent under duress? And you will have a very high percentage of American people say yes. I still consent. I need this, so I'm not going to, rock the boat. I'm not going to whatever. But you're going to find a concessionary kind of statement. I did it because of this. I did it because of that. You're going to find very few that said, I'm so excited to do this. I'm so excited I don't get any value from anything I do online, and unless I set it up, but even then I've lost a lot here, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So the stewardship of the World Trade Center is in history. Hindsight is perfect sight. That whole thing. And all of the claims belong to we the people, derive from the people, but the people were the last ones to get, a fraction of, and that even had to go to court. Okay, so the disrespect is over and over and over and over again. Donald J. Trump, 2017 to the present, is holding the bag for the anniversary 2020, 20 years of maturation of bonds on the impeachment portfolio historically up until now, okay, because the impeachment portfolio has been renewing every 20 years. And so who's on the time schedule here? Obama. But did they do Obama? No. Why? Because he did really good in giving away all of the rights of all of the people, of everything Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac touched. They handed it over to India. And India changed the contracts from ownership to tenancy. Because in India, you don't own anything. And everything transfers after they die, and it's very old, and they're going, that was the measure that we've always done for our Ancient of Days. Well, that's why you have so much poverty. And there really isn't anybody there that can say, across the board, I'm so proud. I'm so proud. Well, no, I'm not proud at all. So India is not America. India doesn't even believe, I don't know, Jesus Christ, where Jesus is in India, and I don't want to take issue with that, but I know for a fact that Jesus Christ is not the focal point of faith in India, like it is in America. So there's a Barack Obama Muslim orientation of faith opened up our banking administrative jurisdiction, invaded it to have India in. Is that impeachable? Absolutely. Is that on the table? No. So we're going into President Obama or Trump now because President Obama didn't get the 2014 maturation of bonds. It is now President Trump's to get impeached. Now, President Trump can turn around and file impeachment charges against Congress because of the premeditation of bonds, maturation of bonds, because of the pathways of AIG seamlessly being the ones to get paid out over the American people and protect these issues. Invasion, it's happened in administrative. Look at the codification. You've got rebellion, which is you look at the tax traps and you look at fair, what is fair and what is right and what is good, which is transparency or some kind of disclosure and consent of we the people, and they get nothing. In the realms of the tax traps, which you don't even find those instructions anywhere but in lawyer books of constitutional law. You don't find even in the tax preparation manuals, because I've studied them, anything about Delaware tax traps. Okay, because they are secrets. They are state secrets, only open to attorneys and attorney-client privileges. And there is not even an open door there for tax preparation people. So these are the encroachments. These are the blocks. These are the legitimate places of entrapment and encroachment and slavery unto these little tiny places that you put us all in. And now you want us to all jump on board. And do I take issue with President Trump on on certain things? Yes. Am I highly concerned about anything? Yes. Number one, I'm highly concerned about his health, because you have put him through so much. Number two, I would say get a hold of our Social Security portfolio and see if it's in Slovenia or Slovanka or wherever it is. And I heard wind that it got transferred over there, and it's easy to do. You're in Florida, you're in a different jurisdiction. You're depending on where you're signing documents. If you're signing documents in an airplane, you're on a completely different jurisdiction. Okay, so our president has been given, there's just been such a push and a shove with him. He doesn't trust people. And because he doesn't trust people, he's left himself open to not being defended. Because you can't defend somebody if you're not there. You don't see it. You don't know. And so his witnesses of his personal actions are few. And that is what he's needing right now. And I know that God sees him. But I would say, Jared Kushner, look at closely to see what has he been doing with the securities tradings of the House of the White House. Who is doing the securities tradings, and who is that team? And look at that very, very, very closely, and you will find a multitude of facts. But you have to ask yourself, insider trading, Congress, you're going to actually point the finger at our president when you know in your heart of hearts you're guilty of some of the stuff that you're talking about. Articles of impeachment, now emollients. I'm asking you, Leader Pelosi, Leadership McConnell, leadership, you guys, emollients, hello, are you guys guilty? Are you all guilty of the very thing that you're pointing the finger at, is what I'm asking. Okay? And this is where privilege stops abiding in duty. And privilege just is greed. And privilege just is this lower level, greedy, self-absorbed, self-evolved, completely self-evolved. But the thing when you're self-evolved is that you got to come out of that evolution to apply what you have with you. And then you have to understand, where am I in respect? You've got to understand what you're saying in context of respect. And that is where this impeachment is completely a debauchery and a complete laughingstock spectacle of our system. We're so much bigger than this. Okay, so we should be busy with such other more powerful things in terms of our lives in foundation and putting it together for all. Okay, and it's first for America, so we can get it up and running like momentum, and then it's going to be for our trading partners. And this is what's been under attack. Our World Trade Center, it's our world trade. Does Satan want us to trade? No. He wants us to hate each other. It is so lower level. To have a World Trade Center that is truly a loving, wonderful, honest, high ethics, high return of investment, really, really honest and foundationally impacting every country in a positive way of freedom building. Because, you can go, okay, well, what are we going to control if we don't control like we've always controlled? Okay, what you guys are going to do, you've never allowed yourself to do it before, but you're going to go into a transition space of care, just sowing seed to caring for people, caring for people, caring for people. They're going to get it. It takes about 5 years to believe you're no longer going to be traumatized. By closing the IRS, believe me, people are still going to send their taxes. They don't have to, but they're going to, because they're good citizens and they're going to do it anyway. It's a tribute. And that should be just a simple tweak and say, let's turn taxes into tribute and let's go into this new place, brand new dedicated Treasury Department, a beautiful place, have that be a fabulous honored structure, rededicate the word federal back to America. And I want to say this about federations. Foreign federations are infiltrated into our education system in the military schools. So Vladimir Putin went to he went to the Federation, Schools of Federation. So did Donald Trump, Schools of Federation. You can tell by the way he stands, and he's there at the UN or the NATO, and how they all get in line to take the picture says so much about their body language getting ready for this picture. And I'm so proud of my president in this way, because he checks his tie and he checks himself and he stands up straight and he presents himself well, and that says so much for our country. But you learn that in the military. You don't throw your clothes down. You don't, you're not a slob, and you don't just throw things around. You care about things, and that's from the military. So there's so much good in this, but here's how it goes badly. When the Federation of the United States of America is never ever talked about and easily construed and blended in jurisdiction with the federal, which is really privatized and not public, or public and not private, or both, and we don't really know. Yeah, you're opening up the door for this nebulous, chasing your tail, labyrinth, Dodd-Frank, a lot of these designs of getting nowhere, spending a ton of time, like in your college degree, when you get your transcripts, those are security instruments. They have bonds that have been built. All of your grades, all of your curriculum, all of your thesis, everything you've put into your educational portfolio should be giving back dividends right away. I mean, right away. So if you're not getting any dividends from the bond portfolio of your education, it's because they didn't teach it to you, really. And they didn't ever put their finger on it and say, this is super important for you to understand. No, instead they handed you the debt. Okay, if that's not treason, I don't know what is. Okay, now that's been going on and on and on and on, and Congress knows that. So what do? There's all this value that's embezzled instead. And Congress has had an understanding of this equity. And Nancy Pelosi even said that. We can do some equity here on this or that or blah, blah, blah. She knows. But she's not going to disclose to the people. And that's what freedom is. Freedom is getting leadership to just pull back the curtain and say, okay, here's the equity. All students, K through 12, and then into junior college, and then into university, and then into PhDs, and all of this ambassadorship of freedom, yeah, that needs honor like we have not seen it. Double time, retrospect, and back pay, and go back and come forward and bring reward where reward is needed to our education, our teachers, our curriculum writers, our institutions. Come on. I mean, this has really been sad. I mean, you don't even give them the benefit of the doubt. Oh my gosh, that's just Congress, Okay, so the valuation quantification of wisdom of righteousness is now before you. Okay, all the carnality is extremely saturated. We already know that, but there is a brand new intrinsic measure to see, and let's do this so we are no longer hurting ourselves or each other, right? And in this timeline of the presidency, I am the Maiden, Misha G. Valdez, and I choose to not persecute my presidents. My presidential list of people on this list, if they are all alive or none of them are alive or some of them are alive, I'm talking about our presidents that are still alive, that there is a redemption here for this timeline of these issues that could easily be qualified as high crimes and misdemeanors that were never impeached upon. The fact that you didn't impeach upon them either was one of two reasons. You wanted to love and respect the president, which is the right reason. And the other reason is that you were involved in the investment. That's the wrong reason. That's bias. So we need to understand our consistency of leadership is so much more important than to be all of a sudden revved up to point your finger at a president that you know never did have disclosure inside of a presidential political arena. He had mob disclosure, he had mob contacts, he had big bank contacts, but even they didn't love him. And that evidence is 1990 when they over-leveraged him to go bankrupt so that they could exploit that bankrupt portal. And that's what they're doing right now in the 13th district in New York City bankruptcy court, is that portal is so completely fraudulent, as it is covering DITEC and it is covering these high crimes and misdemeanor banking fraud, financial crimes. It's all right in front of you. I've written to Christopher Wray about it. And I'm just saying, you guys need to understand where you want to be consistent and where you want to really say to your agents of all these bureaus, all these security forces, from our police department, sheriffs, fire, rescue, all the way to the top of the Marine Corps and on, is just because we had leadership that began our security forces maybe in a compromising situation like the FBI, it doesn't mean that you can't have brand new leadership that protects your agents, protects those who protect. And you take that to the bank, and you say it with your checkbook in the insurance risks, that we're going to have two books now. We're going to have the living books, which are going to bring dividends and incentives to every agent, every security force, every body and in minute person of the security force, that they will have incentives, high incentives to do well, not lie, cheat, steal, fight God, be a rebel, or any of these other things that happen to trigger the default setting, which is now underwater, a lucrative position. So it's gotten really ahead of us in many ways, high crimes and misdemeanors. And our Congress is cherry picking now Donald Trump, going after emollients, because that's one of the ones that's on the risk of war, risk whatever, invasion of administrative, that's considered an emollient. And then what else? What was the other one? I don't know, if it was weapons, or I don't know what it was. Using the money, holding the money in 90 days. And if you guys do look at that, that's another financial securities positioning of more of the same that you guys know about all the time, and you decided to pick it now. And which is ridiculously stupid, because if you guys have your eye on the ball, the eye on the ball are the holy bonds of Christmas. Oh my gosh. You talk about going from poverty to immense wealth and out of this stratosphere wealth. This is it. It's right in front of you. And in doing this, making an example of this impeachment portfolio and saying, okay, how are we going to keep the impeachment portfolio alive if we don't impeach President Trump? By going redemption. You're bringing the impeachment forward, but you're putting it you're tabling it, which means when you put it on the table, it is indefinitely held there. Okay? So, but when you put it on the table of redemption, then you look at the value of up until this time, and up until this time would be Vietnam. So you look at all of Vietnam to now, as far as the casualties of war, all these presidents' involvements in the different wars, Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq, all of these different people, we've had casualties all throughout this, double generations of presidencies understanding this more clearly. World Trade Center, that is a gigantic financial portfolio that we are the leaders of finance in America, and this is the proof that we are the leaders. If you would just give us the chance to rise in the freedom that we really do possess here and stop fighting our own friendly fire, which is exactly what this is, and get our contracts back because they're in India going tenancy, and this is bogus, guys. This is completely and totally bogus. Okay, so that was the end of my little timeline thing. As you can see, I've got a cold, pretty kind of intense cough. I want to cover this other thing about the Jewish thing. Jesus says in the Word of God, Jesus is Jewish. He's like, they hated me, okay? And he's speaking out to everybody in the resurrection. Jesus is the resurrection. He's alive, and he's everything. But Jesus is not on a team that never plays the ball. Jesus is on the team that is always playing the ball. Jesus is on the team that is always in momentum, always going forward in the love, in the giving, in the overtures of care, in the overtures, the high road, overtures, not the undertures, the overtures. Jesus always is coming from above to you. And he's like, my wisdom is from above, not below. I am from above, not below. I am different. My thoughts are different. Everything about God is different than us, but he has created us in his image. Okay, so being Jewish, his bloodline, Jewish bloodline, that's Jesus. And so if you don't even get it, because sometimes it's so weird, like, okay, what's the problem? They're Jewish. Okay, what is the problem with that? Jesus was Jewish. Dude, I mean, wouldn't that be like a cool thing to have a friend that was kind of had the same vibe as Jesus' DNA? Yes. And so it's like you don't have to buy into it. This Jesus hatred, Jewish hatred, whatever, it is so lower level thinking. It is a Hitler thing. You just leave it. Because even Hitler betrayed all of his ideologies. Hitler betrayed all of his own ideologies, which were all insanity, big time. Okay, so going back to Jewish, okay? Now, let's talk about how the Jewish ability to get wealth, because God gave an anointing to the Jewish people to get wealth. Now, what is it going on in Israel today is that Israel has never altogether come together as a whole and said Jesus Christ is the Messiah. We finally decided as a nation, Jesus Christ is the Messiah. We took him off of the prophet list. We took him off of the nice guy list. We took him off of all the other gods list. And we really did elevate him to Jesus Christ is the Messiah, Lord and King. We are Israel. We are the state, country, nation of Israel. And we are proclaiming to the world Jesus Christ is the Messiah. They haven't done that yet. Okay. Now, who has done that? I've done that. Okay. And America literally put it on their currency. In God we trust. You can't have God without the Bible. And so America has done it. Okay? Hello?